Would a great innovator give up so easily on that promised future?
I won't. I'll find a way to save us all.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today, I want to review day one of the Elite Specialization beta for the End of Dragon stuff. So if you're out of the loop, the Virtuoso, that's the Mesmer Elite spec, the Willbender, that's the Guardian, and the Harbinger, that's the Necromancer, are all playable in-game right now. You just log in. You don't need to have even pre-purchased End of Dragons. You just have 3 new special character slots, and in those slots, you can create these new Elite Specializations. I spent a good amount of time, first of all, on stream, with my live impressions of the beta, and then after the stream I actually continued playing the game until finally crashing and going to bed. Here I am the next morning, and I kind of want to do a big summary review. The big ticket items, these obviously are going to be all of my observations, but the major things I observed. Now before we get into this, a little bit of a sense of the vibe of the day. There was insane in-game activity. Do you guys remember, like last week, a week and a half ago, I said that I was changing the way that getting into Spud worked. Basically, you can go to the Discord, just send me a mail and say what region you're on, you'll get in the guild. Well, that's meant like 60 new people have joined over the past couple of days, and the chat was going mental because everyone was obviously logged in playing the Elite spec. On top of that, just the game itself felt ridiculously populated. I first logged in not on a beta character, just on my on Liss out somewhere in Path of Fire, and immediately I saw like Virtuoso run past me using all these flashy animations, which by the way look really good in game. I kind of alluded to this on a previous video, but the trailers do not do justice how good this stuff looks when I'm actually rendering it and playing it for myself. I don't know whether it's because, you know, I've optimized my client as much as I possibly can. You guys saw that video on that recently. Whether it's because I have a 1440p monitor and they do their trailers at 1080 or something. But really, it looked so good. Like, what in the trailers looked overly bloomy, and in the first look streams and stuff looked overly bloomy, just looked really crisp, really vibrant, really beautiful. I'd love seeing the blades around the character and all these ridiculous animations. The game just felt super fresh, and it reminded me of something that feels so good with the Guild Wars expansion, when you just see so much new stuff happening all around you, not just in terms of the environments and the enemies, but the players themselves that are around you just look cooler and are doing fun things. So it felt amazing. Even just the icons look cool, you know? I don't know, it's definitely just because they're new, because it's been so long since POF came out, but they look awesome to see, like in the party UI and so on. I will say, and a few people have observed this, the Willbender one looks so thiefy. I mean, if you think about it, the core thief icon is like the crossed daggers, and now it's like 2 crossed swords. It feels very, very thiefy, but they look amazing, man. There was kind of another big thing to know about the beta, that I'm waiting for the dust to settle to know how openly I should talk about it. I'm guessing I'll be talking very openly about it, but we'll see. There was a leak of sorts. There was a date, basically, where on the new beta characters, if you want to try them in PvE, they give you these boxes that allow you to select the weapons that the Elite Specialization will run and so on. Well, those boxes were data mined from the game. And I want to be clear, this wasn't Shaman that did this. Shaman is a much more ethical data miner than this. But all the boxes for the other Elite specs were mined. So we do now know all the weapons for the remaining 6, which you can find very easily on Reddit at the moment. And I'm guessing I'll talk about that probably on End of Dragons Daily 2, because it's common knowledge amongst everyone. In general, though, if it remains a little bit secretive, I'll try and preserve that. But I don't like this thing where like half my comments are filled with spoilers. Like I did the stream yesterday, and it was just filled with people talking about the new weapons, and I can't stop that, you know. So this one video, I'll hold off on that. And as I review, if it feels like people want to be kept in the dark or are still in the dark, we'll go with that. If not, there'll be a lot of speculation. I actually kind of want to just review all 6 of the results, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, there was kind of another beta tangential thing. So, the way I set up day one is what I wanted to do was dedicate it to a specific area of the game. Obviously, how the elite spec feels in PvE is very different to how it feels in a raid or in a fractal. One of the guildies actually went in to try and solo Ascon Catacombs. Everything's available. You can take it to 1 vs 1, PvP of course as well. I picked PvP for day one, so that's what a lot of these impressions are based off of. I think PvP is the richest area of the game. For all of its faults and its limited community and so on, you do get a ton out of the build craft. So, I feel like I can click with these specs straight away and just know how much fun I'll be having with them. And I do have a ton of impressions. There is obviously to consider though here that the PvP balance is a bit different. Like there's not any big damage on the CC skills. The first thing I wanted to try was a Harbinger that nuked people with the 5, but it doesn't even nuke people with the damage, right, on the 5 anymore. So do consider that, and as I go through day 2 and 3 here, I'm going to be looking at the other areas as well. So let's jump in with the Harbinger. I'm guessing you've been watching a bit of that footage in the background. The Harbinger by far was my favorite thing to play for the day in the competitive environments. Really strong, really nice flow and sense of impact and weight. I think the reason that I had so much fun on it is because it feels nuts overtuned, but more than that, it actually has like a lot of interesting build paths. I tried a power variant. I tried a condi variant. I tried a variant where you are spamming all boons and 25 might to your minions. That was actually a Twitch chat idea, but a really fun one once it clicked for me what the concept was of sharing all of the elixir stuff out to them. You know, you're a MOBA player and then you just have a swarm of all these minions rapidly attacking and executing all their animations super fast because they have quickness and they have all this might and they try and blow someone up. And I gotta say, I had a ton of fun absolutely crushing people on Harbinger. There's definitely some outlier stuff that I think will get refined away. First, let's talk about the mobility. In a lot of ways, Harbinger feels like Hollow to me because you toggle into like this new form. Hollow obviously has the Photon Forge. We're going into a Shroud. And then you start moving. In Hollow, you use like the Photon Leap and you just rush. On Harbinger, though, it's turned up to 10 because you actually have 2 massive mobility skills. Toggling in at any point and spamming both of the mobility skills back to back clears you so much distance. It's ridiculous. Going into this beta, there was a lot of talk about how the Willbender was the super speedy, amazing feeling thing to roam around on, but actually I found Harbinger felt way faster. You guys have got to try it out. Not to mention the fact that one of the abilities is evading as you go through, lands with a daze, and has a big bomb of damage on the end. And the cooldowns are so low, you can nearly always get at them when you toggle in and out of Shroud. So very often, if I was in a fight that was going bad, I could just run away. Or if I was looking at a fight that was going bad, like a big team fight, I could get into it in time. Another thing that feels very Hollow-like to me is one of the staples I enjoy on Hollow builds throughout the Path of Fire era is Heal Turret. Because you can combo with Heal Turret in a lot of great ways. Like the Leap, for example, you can leap out of the water field on the F1 and so on. But what's really been fun for me on Hollow with Heal Turret is when I'm in a big, intense fight where I'm trying to bomb out a lot of damage and a lot of CC, which is exactly how Harbinger feels. You might see an ally gets low, you run over to them and you do like a Heal Turret blast combo on them to prop them up and to cleanse them. Harbinger feels the same, except what you're doing now is the elixirs. You're doing it specifically with the elite, but the other elixirs are nice too. Sharing all boons in the game, plus 25 might. It's nuts. I cannot imagine this thing lasting. You guys have to play and try this for now. I've had so many fun experiences where, you know, you wait just a few seconds for a team fight to start out. People figure out what target they're on. Everyone's kind of grouped, training someone down, and then you pop that elixir, and it's just game over. Or you open from stealth with that elixir, and it's game over. Or you pop it for yourself in a 1v1, and it's game over. This thing is so overtuned. I feel like I can win nearly all my 1v1s. That's largely due to the disengage potential, but also the resustain. The resustain is crazy. So I did like a blood bank attempt and an eternal life attempt, which I talked about, I think, in one of my earlier YouTube videos. But the resustain you get is classified as a regenerative effect, so it doesn't actually do the barrier synergy. So that doesn't work. But just playing something really aggressive, like a weakness spamming condi variant or a power variant, you can resustain really hard. Even in team fights, at one moment it will feel like it's quite close, and I might nearly have died, possibly. But then I get the slight upper hand, and all of a sudden, I'm at 100% health. and they're still playing normal Guild Wars 2, and I'm in some busted ludicrous world where, you know, I'm doing fine. It is a little bit squishier, I will say. So the Blight, it's very easy to get a lot of Vitality, and on all my builds I've been running Vitality. So you don't necessarily feel the Blight hitting your max health that badly, but the fact that Shroud doesn't protect you and the fact that Blight is there, you can be trained down. Like if double rev jumps on you, or if just 2 power pressure builds get on you quick, you will die. That's kind of like a Necro problem, and it's a thing for Scourge, it's a thing for Reaper, or in a lot of balance areas that's been a thing. So I'm kind of used to it on Necro, but what I would say is Harbinger doesn't feel even worse for it than the other builds do. I think that's because Harbinger has so much disengage. You know, a Reaper could Death Charge away, and then he's having to go into his utilities immediately. He's having to Fleshworm, he's having to Spectral Walk, and the Harbinger just doesn't feel that way. You know, I've got these epic long evades where I run away from people. So yes, it does have that slight downside, but in general, the impact feels so good. I even think, and now I criticise these a little bit, my impressions on the previous video, the early information, the Grandmasters feel pretty good. I would like them to have more distinct animations or slightly more distinct playstyles, but they feel really well calibrated to me. Like, I am wondering, oh, is the 1 stack of stab really good, or is the ferocity really good, or is that quickness really good, or do I want to just spam weakness? Even on a power build, I kind of like the idea of spamming weakness. I love the names for all the traits, guys, as well. Phoenix Protocol on the Willbender, Approaching Doom is the name of one of the ones on the Harbinger. It's just great. And lastly, we got the weapon skills to talk about. Pistol is really fun. Now, probably because it's overtuned, and as soon as that stun's not there, it becomes a quarter of a second daze. It might feel a little bit less interesting, but right now, because that stun is there, it is so fun to combo with other weapons. Like, you can stun them, which obviously sets up your pistol to a rapid striking 900 range thing, and then swap into axe and do it again. So you get like these really nasty multi-packet scratch spikes. They're really cool. Or you could even have a dagger, and you could do it with the dagger. The other thing you can do is you can dagger 3 to outrange and mobilize someone, then swap, and that immob guarantees the stun from the pistol, and then you chain into a whole other set. You could just go like, just like with Hollow, where it was like, you can bomb out CC after CC after CC, whether that was overcharged shot into, you know, a shockwave, into, you know, pulling people back in with a ring if you're a prot Hollow or whatever, and then a Prime Light Beam follows it up. You can just go CC again and again and again. Harbinger feels exactly the same in terms of just chaining this stuff back to back. And it's all because of that pistol 3, really. I love the pistol as it's currently tuned. Complementing it with dagger and axe all feel good. I played it with like a more competitive kite-oriented build with the staff as well, which felt pretty good too. And then that's of course just softening people up for the big attacks while you're in Shroud. I can't imagine how strong that Shroud's going to feel in PvE when like the 5 actually starts doing damage again. But then the impact of CCs and stuff feel a lot less fun in PvE as well. So hey, you know, there's a bit of a balance going on there. So just to round out the Harbinger section, I do think a lot of it is because it's overtuned. I think the fundamentals, I still stand by what I said before. It feels a bit light, you know, the pistol feels exactly like an NG pistol, just an overtuned one. The Shroud feels a bit weird and a bit floaty with how many animations it's got for movement and stuff at the moment. And when it's a bit more refined, I wonder how great it's going to feel. The Elixir share is awesome, but as soon as those boons go away, I don't know how awesome it's going to feel anymore. And the other thing I would actually say that was really OP about Harbinger right now, and maybe they can leave the impact of the abilities if they shave this other thing, it's actually just the amount of life force you can get. Like, you know how if I have 0 Shroud, I can toggle into Harbinger Shroud for free, and it gives me a good chunk of life force, so I can get multiple animations off, but a lot of those abilities are giving me life force back. Like, if I just if I'm in the heat of it, and I have no life force anymore, so therefore no resustain, I can dip into Shroud and use the 5, and siphon an epic amount of life force instantly for myself. And then maybe do the 2, and I'm like 100% toggle out, and I'm getting epic resustain again. So I think that's why it feels so strong, just that there's so much life force around, and I've got my eye on what the studio does with that as we go forwards. Let's have a look at the Virtuoso. So my Virtuoso impressions are kind of the reverse of my Harbinger ones. I really didn't enjoy my time on the Virtuoso. Now, I'm not definitively saying that this thing is bad or anything. You'll remember before the beta came out, I was saying this looks like it's going to struggle in competitive spaces. Perhaps that's to be expected. Apparently, it's benchmarking well in PvE. I mean, I can't imagine something more boring to do during a beta than benchmarking on a goddamn golem. But apparently, Virtuoso does well there. For competitive, I personally struggled on any variant I built. I tried a Condi setup, I tried a more bruisery setup, and I tried 2 different power setups. The one thing I never really added at any point was a focus offhand, which apparently people have been a success with in World vs. World, and I never really tried with GS. Now, GS is obviously a no-brainer, and I got very close to running it a few times, but there's kind of a thing where it was like, if I was just bursting and winning fights and killing people with Greatsword, well, the playstyle there and the experience I'm having there isn't really too different to what I've already been able to do on Core Mesmer for all these years, or what I've been able to do on Mirage, or even some Chrono Spikes. So I was kind of much more interested in making Dagger work, and making the new Blade songs work, because those are like the new skills, those are the new animations, and obviously the new Elite and those. Now, trying as I might to use the new toys as much as possible, I just couldn't make this click. In fact, I felt completely useless, and I had a really weird experience that I've never had in Guild Wars 2 before, where very often I'd be looking at multiple weapon skills available, and none of them really even feeling very useful. So, like, let's look at Dagger in a competitive setting. Like, it's a 1200 range, reasonable pressure thing, so you can sort of auto away. But the thing is, if you want to be free casting with it, for example, maybe you're trying to do pressure as an auto thing, you got to consider that the 2 is like a fan attack. So if you can't really use the 2 while you're at 1200 range, because the projectiles from the 2 will just spread out, and you're not going to like be able to shotgun people with it. It's a shotgun ability, so it's really much more melee feeling. And the 3 likewise feels like a point blank AoE ability. It's a really slow moving storm that comes out kind of in front of you. So now you're moving in, but now all your shatters feel like they're not fun because you're really close. You know, we talked a little bit about the idea that there's that trait that gives you a damage modifier when you're close, and I'm sure that assists with, you know, some like Mind Blade spikes and stuff. But the truth is that a lot of the rest of the kit feels like it wants to be at range, and the weapon skills that come along with the dagger feel like there's a bit of a mismatch there. And, you know, I tried complementing it with Torch, like an escape artist, so I'm getting, like, stealths giving me blades. That was a cool idea I had. I tried complementing it with Dagger, so the magic, Pistol, so the magic bullet, like, sets me up for a bigger elite and stuff. But none of it was really landing. Talking about slow animations, all of the Blade songs kind of cast quite slowly and move slowly. The Elite has a thing where it's a long, slow cast time, a very narrow area that it will hit, and the projectiles trail out very narrowly. Do you guys remember before this came out in the beta discussion I had with Boots? I said it would be cool to see the Elite be slower but last a longer period of time. I was totally wrong about that idea, because the Elite already feels like that. It takes a long time and it slowly trickles its damage out, and people just walk out of it. They accidentally walk out of it. They walk into it and therefore avoid it because they've walked through it before the projectiles actually start to land. Or it just doesn't do any damage. You know, there's a bit of weakness or a bit of protection around, and it's supposed to do like this big nuke of damage, and there's just really very, very little. I so rarely manage to get it to land. Basically, in a competitive setting, you need to wait for someone to go downstate, and then your Elite becomes available. And that's not necessarily bad. We've had experiences like that in the past, say like Ghastly Breach and so on, but I just feel like it really needs a lot more quality of life, and a ton of the Virtuoso stuff felt like they needed it. Another idea I tried was like this bleed concept, where, you know, all your blades are critting, and then they're 100% chance to bleed. So you dodge and you throw a blade out, or you do a phantasm and it throws a blade out, and there's bleeds, and your dagger stuff's a blade, so there bleeds. And I just didn't feel it rolling up. I just couldn't feel any bleed pressure. It felt especially horrendous to be fighting like against a core Condi ranger who's just pew-pewing and doing infinitely more bleeds and infinitely more Condi at much higher rate of quality of life than the Virtuoso could pull off. It doesn't end there. Another cool idea that I immediately played with was, well, they're all new shatters, right? So why don't we play a build where we take Master of Fragmentation, which is a core Mesmer trait, that but supercharges shatters, right? That's the whole idea. It's a GM trait that supercharges shatter. It was cool for Core Mesmer. It was cool when they reworked all the Chrono shatters. Like, how do these interactions work? So let's supercharge our Blade Songs. That's going to be really fun, right? That's the new toys as good as they can be. And I played like Shatter Storms so that they get ammo and so on. Like, that's a fun idea for a build. Now, one of the things that Master of Fragmentation does is it makes your F3 hit nearby targets. That's the phrasing of it. So I thought it would be really cool then that this combo meant a Virtuoso can throw out a ton of blades, like this epic salvo of blades on F3, and they're all doing mini dazes. That sounded cool to me. You know, it's all about building a lot of ammo, and then you do these epic salvos on F3. Except it's not that. It's just one dagger that now gets a little bit AoE. One blade. I mean, it really, really fell apart, that idea of the build completely. The new distortion shatter, losing actual distortion. Now it's just a block, so I'm dying to condies while I'm in it. Feels awful. I'm really happy that retaliation isn't the game anymore, because you're obviously flicking out damage at the same time, and you'd be getting killed by retail through that block. It feels really weird to have a utility skill for getting distortion back and getting generation back. And the idea of doing like the Blade Song F4 and then the distortion on the utility skill and then maybe going back kind of worked. But they just felt so slow, and the counter pressure that you get is just so low. Speaking of counter pressure, here's probably the worst thing about it. And I'm going to stop on this big tirade here. But really, this is my authentic experience of the Virtuoso. What can I say? The worst thing is, you need to face your target for a ton of this stuff. So like the heal skill as it's currently made is really, really bad, because if you're healing, you're trying to kite away, right? You're trying to run away from people. But if you have a target, as in, you know, you want to throw a little blade at someone while you heal, it will cancel cast the heal. So it's incredibly fiddly to use. And you have to be very careful about precisely when and how you use that heal. If you look at other heals in the game that flick a bit of damage back, like the Elementalist Arcane Brilliance or something, they're point-blank AoEs, so you don't have this problem. The Virtuoso is a targeted thrown dagger, and it feels really naff. What about Shatters? What if I want to counter-pressure someone as I'm running away or I'm kiting on a box or something? Well, once again, I have to be facing the target, and I have the long slow cast time, and then the slow projectile time afterwards. So you basically can't do it, because all your F skills are going to be getting cancel cast. It just doesn't work, really, on a lot of ways, as far as I could play. There was someone in chat saying, oh no, it's amazing, there's like a 15k spike you can do. And look, I don't deny that there's maybe some gimmicky builds out there that can make value out of it. And maybe there are real builds. Once I really know the animation, and once you really refine it and try and make it work, it probably will land somewhere. But right now, to me, it wouldn't click. And I have to say, it felt a lot like the Renegade for its first few years in POF, like how clunky Renegade shortbow stuff felt like, and with, you know, all the issues with the spirits in those early years, feels kind of like the same thing. So there you have it. And lastly, we have the Willbender. Man, I should put timestamps on this one, right? That would work pretty well. If you guys put those in the comments, I'll definitely throw those in the description. So Willbender, in terms of like quality of life and weight to animations and feel and fun from all of its utilities and stuff, I really love. It has a lot of really fun new facets and animations to think about and play with that really meant I had a lot of fun playing the Willbender. At the same time, it's not overpowered at all. I actually think it's very middle of the road, if not slightly weak. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually quite respect that it's not ludicrously overtuned during the beta balance here. Compared to the Virtuoso, which feels weak because of clunkiness, the Willbender doesn't necessarily feel weak because of clunkiness. It feels weird because of its tuning, which is quite interesting. I actually think two things are going on. One of them I actually predicted and talked about in a previous video. The other thing I didn't expect at all, and that is the mobility. So let's talk about this. The 3 F skill mobility, it's nowhere near as much as I think we all thought it was going to be. I don't know whether it was nerfed since the first look streams that they did. I thought that all of the mobility skills were like 900 range, and maybe the teleport was 1200 range. But it's not that. They're like 450. They're really short. And on top of that, like the F1, because it has this punch part to the animation at the end, there's actually a little bit of a stop at the end of it. So it really doesn't move you that far, and it doesn't move you that efficiently. For the F3, there's a cast time on beginning the shadow step, like when you jump in the air. And you can move during that cast time. So what that means is if you tried to port the full range, you actually end up walking a considerable chunk of the teleports before the teleport goes off. So you actually cut, if you're trying to teleport in the same direction that you're running, you actually don't go that far. The only way to get max value out of that teleport is to be running in one direction and then teleport behind you and then go off in the other direction. The F2 feels kind of okay, but again, the range is not very far. I don't know whether they nerfed it down, but immediately that totally changed the face of the Willbender. And it's funny, I actually think this is a really good thing, because now I've seen what the world looks like with a really weak Willbender for those F skills, and in the next beta, I want to see them all turbocharged. I want to see them actually up to the mobility that I was imagining from those original streams. The fact that there was no mobility meant that it killed the idea of me complementing like a hammer build. Hammer's kind of very immobile, so I like the idea of having 3 F skills at any moment that I could use to move around. There's also another thing with the F skills, which I kind of have that experience on Firebrand. If you're playing a really slow Firebrand, you kind of have this ugly thing where sometimes you want to use like a tome to give yourself swiftness and move, but you know you can't do that, because if you waste a tome on just swiftness and then a fight starts, you might lose the fight because you don't have the really big powerful tools. Willbender kind of feels the same as well, you know? If I use the F1 while I'm out of combat, now I don't get the claws to actually fight with, you know, the burning claw on the ground, or I don't get the alacrity from Phoenix Protocol, or I don't get the Aegis spam from the F3 from Courage. So I kind of like that push-pull idea, but I feel really disincentivized to actually use those abilities at their current cooldowns, which are very, very low. Meanwhile, the Harbinger gets double 900 range leaps that there's absolutely no consequence to use to engage or disengage from any fight, and flows way faster and way better than I think that the Willbender does at its current balance. Let's continue talking about the mobility. Sword Offhand. Sword Offhand, I said, the skill 5, it's like a rush. It's like a really cool, amazing looking trail effect and a cool sound effect, and then you teleport at the end. The rush component of it is so short that it doesn't really move you in range of the teleport a lot of the times. It's really fiddly. It doesn't move you as fast as or as far as I thought it would, and I want to see that go up a lot more as well. So again, I don't know whether that's just because in competitive spaces they're nerfed, or just in general they're nerfed. I genuinely didn't touch these things at all in any of the other areas. Maybe they're still the same in World versus World, but that transformed the whole thing. The other side of why the Willbender feels undertuned, again, the animations and stuff feel good and flow good, but the undertuning is that it's all mobility, it's all glass if you want it to be, but no payoff. Sword 4, your big Willbender payoff ability, is very slow and doesn't really feel that meaty. It doesn't compare at all to a Death Strike. It doesn't compare at all to like a Warrior's Axe 4, which is like another dual strike on the 4 slot that you can think of. It really just doesn't have any damage on there. I played with a Zerk Amulet with the power trait as glassy as I really could viably go. And would land that skill 4 where none of it gets blinded, none of it gets blocked, none of it gets dodged, and there's quite a lot of different little animations in there. Because remember, Willbender is about multi-strike hits rather than just one big one. They all crit, they all land, and they all crit, and it still doesn't just feel very good. It's like kind of a meh ability. So then we look at the utility skills, but there's no great payoff utility skill there, especially in competitive. The new Elite is very slow, very clunky, not really worth the CC. There's no damage on it straight away, so I really turned that off very, very quickly. And then you're looking at just core guard stuff. So, like, whenever I felt successful in nuking people and killing people, and at times I could do that, you know, there was a flow, and again, it was fun to a degree. But whenever I was feeling successful, I felt like it's because I was doing core guard stuff. Is because the Sword 3 symbol and the Sword 3, you know, rapid attack was killing things. Or it was greatsword stuff. It was always just greatsword stuff. It was GS4, GS2 burst. What I'd rather be doing is massively slamming people with that uppercut on F1. I really like the idea of that getting a lot of the damage, and that becomes a part of your payoff. Like, you really get a meaty hit on the uppercut strike. And just anywhere on the utilities where we get actual those martial arty, weighty impact abilities. That's what I'd like to see most. Another thought, I did try Condi builds. And there's really no Condi build at all here. There's really no support build idea here either. And I think that will make sense in context of the Firebrand just came out, and it does both of those things very well. But it means that the Willbender feels very streamlined, and if it's undertuned in the one big thing it's trying to do, that might be a bit of a problem. My favorite utility skill of the betas is on the Willbender though. I can't remember what it's called, but the rushing, like, chase down, spinning kick attack, the super martial arty monk thing, that feels so cool. It has really high quality of life on it. It isn't actually a massive AoE like I thought it was, so like the idea of putting it on a Condi build with Permeating Wrath, I just couldn't get a sense of there. But it's brilliant chase down, and it feels really good. And it's actually a lot of the damage that I ended up doing in a lot of the fights. Definitely dedicate a slot to that. The Fist Flurry port in, port out ability, again, is kind of slow. I don't think you can move with WASD while it's going on, I believe I was told. So I didn't really play with that very much. But the Whirl Strike, the big kick, that is brilliant. There's still a lot I want to try on Willbender. I never actually played with the Alacrity Phoenix Protocol trait. I mean, these are so cool trait names, right? And I didn't do the Hammer Up concept, so maybe I'll return to that later with Glacial Heart. But generally, I would say I had some middle-of-the-road success on that one. So there you have it, guys. That is day 1 beta impressions. Now, I'm so excited about these, I'm going to go stream again. If you're watching this video at any point new when I just put it up, you might see I'm live over on Twitch. There's always a link in the description, so you can check that out. If you want people to play with and have fun, like we were doing it with 5Qs and unranked for fun, it was really cool. Don't forget that Spud is recruiting. Thanks for all the support, guys. Give me comments on your takes on how I felt in competitive. Builds you had, feel free to ping me builds, put builds in the comments. We can do that now, you know, since the library came in. And the other thing is tell me about the other formats, which I'll be looking at over today. I don't know whether I'll go in World versus World or PvE first, but we can have a look. So thanks, guys. Take care now, and I'll see you next time.